Ladies and gentlemen, right now as we speak, Bitcoin is on the edge of a massive breakout. Matter of fact, this is over on the 15-minute chart, but the real breakout that we are all eyeing right now is the breakout on the 12-hour or on the daily chart that could have some very, very grave consequences. It is right now believed that the moment that this breaks out, it's going to be a pretty quick move towards $83,000. And from most perspective, it does make sense. If you've got no idea why I'm saying that, just take a look at this. Right now as it stands, a ton of liquidity has been built up at roughly the $72,000 range, but also very much so at the $74,000 mark. And we always know that the price seeks the liquidity, which on the imminent short term seems to be mostly based towards the upside. Now, I will of course have to also admit that there are some theses for a breakdown on the short term or a breakout on the longer term towards the downside, which looking at the liquidity would bring us all the way, not just towards 59,000, which would be my first target to go open new massive long positions, but actually all the way towards the $50,000 mark, which would basically bring us back to the prices of roughly February this year. I will tell you the most important part about all this though, because from my perspective, it is almost certain that we are in a massive bull market and that the previous cycle will basically repeat, meaning massive gains throughout the next couple of months. I am basically just looking for new entries. No, I am not trying to short. No, I'm not looking for any very, very short-term positions on Bitcoin, that is. That's what we've got our altcoin positions for. But just to put it into perspective, I've explained to you guys the strategy so many times by now. You can do it manually. You can do it with bots. Matter of fact, I've left some links down below to exchanges I personally use. Bybit I use for most of my trading. OKX I use for the bot trading. And there's a couple other links like Deepcoin, which you can access from everywhere in the world if you've got a VPN. So you can trade basically from everywhere. But right now, I set up a bot, right, on OKX. I talked to you guys about this. I set it up roughly 5 days ago, and I explained here why when I did it. And you can see right now we are in 6% worth of profit, which is, like I explained, roughly 1% a day. And you might think that's amazing, right? But it's actually one of the safer strategies out there, as long as you're in a bull market. But you could definitely take a lot more profit if you're more on it. This is literally as passive as it gets. I put $5,000 into the bot just for safety measures, and it already took out roughly 330 over the last 5 days. You could definitely work around grid bots as well, which basically try to long or short depending on the range you set. For example, you might say, hey, I want to set my range that we're consolidating in, or basically that we are trading in, for example, between, let's just call it 75,000 and 59. That's a wide range, but I'm just putting up a hypothetical here. You could then basically state that the lower the price goes, the more it'll open long positions, but as the higher the price goes, the more it opens short positions, so that when, again, let's say it started here by opening long positions, it immediately sold right there, right? But at that point, depending on which strategy you're following, there's, matter of fact, two, it could either be opening a short position at the same time, but also a long, meaning that as prices go higher, it is only basically adding to the short, right? It just keeps adding until all of a sudden the price comes back down and it takes the profit. But at the same time, it could open a long position, take profit right there, open a new long position, take profit right there, open a new one, for example, but it couldn't take profit, so you wait again, it opens, and again it opens until it takes profit right there. I think the concept is quite easy to understand here. The only point there being you need to define a range, and if you have massive volatility, not within a range, but just like breakout type of territorium, this is not nice for trading with grid bots, because eventually your shorts are not that guaranteed to be in a good position. Because you see, if you were just keep opening shorts time and time and time again, you still might not be in that profit zone as of this point. So yeah. Anyway, as I described earlier though, if this breaks out, I am personally targeting either $83,000 or, even though the signal would post that it's going to go to roughly 53, I'm going to say that if we do break towards the downside, it's going to be a crazier of corrections, and I do believe $50,000 is not ruled out, with of course a little bit of a hiccup at 59,000 first. Yeah, as a matter of fact, I've actually been adding. I also just got myself a new Bybit bot. I just put $300 in, and it's definitely not the best, this one. I've been trying it out for a little bit, but yeah, the previous bots are definitely still running a little bit better. As you guys remember, we put $100 in, got 315 out, $100 in, 200-ish out, and 105 in, about 200 out. But one more thing I'll just quickly tell you is, I really recommend you guys to just sometimes zoom out ever so slightly and realize just how similar previous cycles are to the ones that we're seeing right now. That's one. But also to just how much higher things can go. Many people don't realize that Bitcoin can still triple throughout the cycle, and Ethereum, for example, could definitely still do a 4 or 5x, for example, within just a year. here. Anyway, one thing I'll quickly tell you also is that I'm warning you right now as the Bitcoin halving comes in closer. It's kind of coincidental that we are facing such a consolidation phase slightly before the halving, but as the halving gets closer or potentially even arrives, we could be seeing a pretty good correction based solely on the fact that we have basically peaked too early. Looking at previous cycles, we never got this close, or matter of fact, we actually never breached the all-time high before the halving even came along. And many people like to point out that just slightly before the halving, the amount of time kind of debates, but slightly before the halving, we see a slight little correction. Here we saw it go down from, I don't know how much percent that is, let's say 25% or so. Here, obviously, this was the whole coronavirus situation, but some people also like to point out that right here, there was quite a lot of negative volatility. Let's call it roughly 17 to 19%. And right now, people are saying, hey, well, that's basically what we've seen already here throughout the last couple of days. So is it go time? And to me, it makes sense, but I'm putting it out there that some people are expecting a retest of the trend line. I'm going to call it this little circular line, a little exponential curve that I got going on here. But there again comes my point. It all concludes to the same thing though. If we just zoom ever so slightly out, we know where it's headed. We know, again, not financial advice, just my thoughts, that $100,000, $130,000 is already basically rooted in. So it's just about getting the right entries and making sure that it's not open for too long, which is why we've got a couple of targets, but are mostly just based towards our upward bias. Yes, there might be a little bit of sideways action before we break out, but it is very, very much expected that we see this breakout before the halving comes along. It will be nearly perfect if it came on what, like the April 18th or so. But yeah, as I said before, upwards bias. And I'll add one more tiny, teeny, weeny little thing, and that is actually that the US inflation numbers in the FOMC minutes are going to be coming out over on Wednesday. It's just something to keep in the back of your head that sometimes the S&P makes a massive move because of this, or any other index for that matter, and we could see that being reflected back onto Bitcoin. Chance of it, I think, in a matter as dire as this one, is that it's kind of a small chance that that's going to really be the deciding factor for it, but hey, I will keep it in the back of my head. And I keep kind of adding little things here, but I think it's quite relevant. One more thing to note upon is how often the funding rates basically calm down just before another massive move. As you can see in peak euphoria times, the funding rates are crazy high. And basically when they start to go negative, usually people decide it's good to open some long positions again because that way they make some money and the price just skyrockets. Right here, like last month, I'm going to call it, we had some nearly peak euphoria with funding rates going crazy high. Over the short term, it's definitely come down though. Not going towards negative territory just quite yet, but getting close to it, which could also spark some newly found interest in basically trading. Anyway, guys, I think it's just most important that everybody watch for this bigger Bitcoin breakout. It's going to be the decisive move that I think every single trader in crypto right now is watching. If you're not doing it yet though, make sure you just give it some good attention. And obviously, if you've not done it yet, make sure you press those like buttons up. And I'll see you guys again in another crypto update video, hopefully very soon.